Right, that was eNCA reporter Moloko Moloto. Let's move on to this now. The legal battle between President Cyril Ramaphosa and his predecessor Jacob Zuma will continue tomorrow. Ramaphosa wants Zuma's private prosecution reviewed and set aside. Zuma alleges Ramaphosa violated Section 41 of the eNCA Act as an accessory after the fact. Now, Ramaphosa has already acquired an interim interdict against the prosecution, but wants it made permanent. Our senior reporter, Aviwe Mtila, was following proceedings today and joins us now with the latest. I mean, we have to ask this question. On what basis does the president want this private prosecution set aside, Aviwe?
Well, William, he says that he wasn't even part of that original null prosecu that was given by the DPP last year. So he suggests that he's not a suspect in this matter that involves advocate Billy Downer as well as journalist Karen Moon. So he's wondering why he's there. So it was day one, essentially, of the clash of the presidents today, as, of course, we heard the merits and the arguments today, which will continue tomorrow. Basically, President Cyril Ramaphosa is saying that he was included in the original affidavits that were mentioned by former President Jacob Zuma, suggesting that the president must investigate, and he even responded to that. Remember this issue happening last year, where Zuma wanted the prosecution of Billy Downer because he handed medical records of himself to journalist Karen Moon. So he says that NPA issue must be looked into and it must be investigated. And the former president suggests that, in fact, he did play his part and spoke to the minister, Ronald Lamula, suggesting that the Legal Practice Council, in fact, will have a look at this. But Zuma then added the president, of course, when he got that null prosecu. But remember, all of this also has implications on him as a president of a country. Remember that these are criminal prosecution. If this private prosecution does, in fact, go on to be heard, it will be a criminal matter, and it will have a bearing on him being president of the country, given that there is that crucial step-aside resolution of the African National Congress if you are criminally charged. So the president is trying to avoid some of that. In fact, some of the arguments that we heard earlier on from his legal representatives. In fact, let's take a listen to that.
Sure.
As an individual occupying the office of president, when his rights are threatened, his human rights are threatened or breached, as he alleges, he's got standing to institute proceedings in court to protect his rights by having the unlawful conduct declared invalid and set aside. And that's in line with the giant concepts test. We submit that even if the court were to look at him as cited only in his official capacity as president, there are sufficient facts which establish that even the office, so to speak, the office, not just the human being occupying the office, has a direct interest in the potential impact of the unlawful private prosecution. The first impact of that private prosecution on the office of the president is that, as he alleges, it will result in an undue interference with his duties of office. And you will find that at paragraph 94 of his founding affidavit at page 558. And the second, he alleges that the private prosecution, unlawful private prosecution, will have an adverse impact in the confidence in the republic and confidence in the office of president. And you will find that at paragraph 113 of his founding affidavit at page 563. Now, just stopping there, you have sufficient facts to demonstrate that on the broad constitutional standing requirement, even the office has a direct interest in the continuing unlawful private prosecution.
And obviously, Aviwe, I mean, there's a lot going on with this case, and it's so layered. I mean, some would even argue that it's being argued in the wrong platform, for instance. But I imagine the former president also has a plan for Ramaphosa's argument. What is that, if you know?
It's like you were in court, William, because those were the very arguments of the legal team representing the former President Jacob Zuma. They suggest that that's not the proper platform because that is a litigation matter. And in fact, this is a criminal matter. So no matter what the merits of the case that are actually being ventilated now, the High Court's not the appropriate place. It should be heard, in fact, in the criminal case. So they're suggesting that the jurisdiction of it all, well, that particular court doesn't have the jurisdiction. And in fact, the merits can't be seated and heard there. So they're saying that it should actually go to trial and it should be heard in the criminal aspect of the court itself, which of course puts a light on the presidency. Remember, there is that crucial step aside issue of the president if he is to go to the criminal courts himself. But let's take a listen to the arguments that we heard there from the defense of former President Jacob Zuma.
He is still the president. The proceedings have commenced. Have commenced by issuing the summons. The proceedings have not been interdicted. It is Mr. Zuma who is interdicted. So it's still running. So if indeed it was calculated that he would not be the president when we wake up the following day, but he is still the president. So that means now, even on these facts, the issue of abuse of court process, calculated at achieving certain ends, it cannot be proven. Outside the fact that it's a speculation, it cannot be proven on these particular facts. And there is at least one case law that supports this proposition, that actually an abuse of court process is challenging the time to prosecute. So that means all those 5 prayers, if the court accepts that proposition from this case law that I'm about to make reference, that means all of those prayers are dead. Remember, the first 3 are dead because of jurisdiction. This one, they're still hanging. But I'm saying that in terms of this case law, if the court is with me or with us, then the entire case is dead. This court lacks jurisdiction. It does not matter the merit.
That was our senior reporter, Aviwe Mtila.